You're listening to 90.8 Hills FM Radio.
This is 90.8 Hills FM radio station, using our voice to rate your choice. Stay tuned.
Hello listeners, this is your RJ Betonika back here at 90.8 Hills FM, and I am back with another guest. Aro apni an bi jani thayo, aro kunba du na jani ne thayo, tai kuna se. So he is Worrin Muivah, and he is the CEO of Step Academy. So we'll be heading on to the conversation because I don't want to drag my sign in for such a long time that interview la time kom tu jale, because I'm pretty sure you guys are going to find this conversation very interesting, because this man has an amazing vocabulary and he has this amazing like ideas and creativity, like ni khota kadam de tai ni khota ini huni thakyoli munjala banwas na. So let's head to that, and I would request Sir Worrin to kindly introduce yourself.
Thank you. Hi everyone who's listening. My name is Worrin Muivah. I am originally from Manipur, but I have shifted to Dimapur now. Initially I came because of the conflict in Manipur, and as the conflict dragged on and as the situation never got better, I decided to venture out to Dimapur and do something here. So that's what brought me here. I am currently the founder and CEO of Step Academy, which is an institute that is based in Dimapur that is focused on making the youth of this region job ready. And that's a little bit about myself.
Well, I'm so glad to have you here. First of all, I am pretty sure that the courses you offer and the Step Academy for which we are here for the interview, I'm pretty sure our listeners will also feel like they should get these courses as well. So let's just jump to Step Academy, and would you like to tell us more of Step Academy, like what are the courses that they provide, that you provide, and what is the fee structure about? We can head slowly, so there's not a problem.
Okay, cool. So just for your information, before I came to Dimapur, for the last 3 years, I have been running an NGO in Manipur called Step Northeast, right? So 3 years back, I quit my job and I came back home to Manipur to start my NGO. So for the last 3 years, we've been working in the field of education. The objective is to bridge the divide between urban and rural areas, between the privileged and the less privileged. So Step Northeast's objective is to bridge this gap. So we've been doing this through 3 verticals. One of our first vertical is our outreach program, where we travel from village to village, school to school, and we conduct career counseling workshops. We conduct capacity building training workshops, communication workshops for teachers and students. We also have our flagship program called Step Fellowship, which is a 6 months employability program for underserved indigenous women. So we've been running that program for the last 3 years, where we select the most deserving girls from the tribal community and we train them to become more employable. And 70% of them have been placed and are working across India and abroad. And we also have a third vertical, which is our consultancy firm, where we provide consultancy services for students who wants to go abroad, who are applying for scholarships. We provide it for professionals as well who are preparing for interviews and things like that. So that's what I've been doing for the last 3 years. And because of the conflict, like I said earlier, I came to Dimapur in May 2023, and I thought I'll be here for maybe a few weeks or a month at most and head back home and start my work in Manipur again. But as you can see, the situation never got any better. It got worse, in fact. And as my stay got extended, I decided that if I'm here, I might as well do something useful. And that's when the idea of Step Academy came up. The reason why this academy came up is also because of my experience of having worked in Manipur for the last 3 years. One of the biggest problems that we faced in the Northeast is, and all India in general, Northeast in specific, is our unemployment. And the reason why there is a huge problem of unemployment is because of unemployability. Like 90% of our youth do not possess skills that makes them employable. The only thing they possess is a piece of paper that says this person has successfully graduated from this college with this subject. That's the only thing that we possess after our graduation, which is why it becomes impossible to get a job. Because let's say you go and you go for job applications. Okay, what's your qualification? BA, BSc. Okay, do you know how to use Microsoft Excel? No. Do you know how to write professional emails professionally? No. And then on top of that, there are no communication skills, right? And let's say I ask you, okay, so what questions do you have for me? No questions. So with that condition, how can one ever get a job, right? So we identified this gap. So we came up with this idea of Step Academy, where the objective is to make our youth job ready. So we've curated about 10 courses that we teach in our 2 months program, where the objective is to train them on these aspects and make them more employable. So we have courses on effective communication. So this course is all about how to be a professional in your communication skills. So we focus on body language. How do you walk? How do you stand? How do you sit? How should your posture be, right? When you're talking, how do you use your hand gestures? How can you have eye contact with your audience? How do you control your vocal elements, right? The tone of your voice. Based on certain scenarios, how do you control your tone? How do you not use fillers when you talk? Like, stuff like that.
Okay.
So how do you not use that? Because if you want to be a professional communicator, that is a huge problem. If you keep using fillers all the time. How do you control your pace? So effective communication focuses on all of these aspects. We have courses on fundamentals of English. Many of our graduates do not know how to write grammatically error-free English. So what we do through our course is that we take you back to the fundamentals of grammar and help you write grammatically correct English, right? Then we have a course on creative writing. How do you write creatively without any mistakes? We have a course on personality development, right? Critical thinking, how to use ChatGPT, how do you give prompts in ChatGPT. Then what else? A few more courses, email writing etiquettes. How do you write proper professional emails? How do you write your subject? How do you sign off? How do you write your salutation? So we have curated all of these courses so that by the end of 2 months, you are not just a graduate anymore, but you are a graduate with all of the skills that will help you thrive in the workplace, right? And that is our objective. So that is what we teach at Step Academy. The first batch graduated in November last year. The second batch will begin its session from January 15, which is just next week. So it'll be for 2 months. And the fee is 8,000 rupees for 2 months. And in this program, whatever courses I mentioned before are all included. So it's not independent, right? If for our 2 months program, for a cost of 8,000 rupees, you will be taught all of these 10 courses, which will hopefully make you more professional and job ready. So that is what Step Academy is about.
So is the classes given regularly, or is it done on an alternative basis?
So classes happens from Monday to Thursday, 4 to 6 p.m. So for 2 months, Monday to Thursday, we have classes from 4 to 6. And another important aspect of our program is our guest sessions. So every week we bring in a guest who have accomplished something or achieved something, and we let them come and tell our students their story. Right? So we want to create role models for our students. We want to create relatable people where they can be influenced, where they can be motivated. So in our previous sessions, for example, we had someone who has gone to Oxford come and tell us her journey of growing up in a small town in Northeast India to getting accepted into Oxford, and how the process was like, and how do you apply for Oxford, things like that. So we have guests from entrepreneurs who are successful come and tell us their story. So our guest sessions have also been curated in such a way that students get motivated and are, and help them to come out of their comfort zone. So there's another aspect of our program.
Okay, and would you like to tell us about who are the instructors or the lecturers for your professional courses?
Okay. Our USP is that we have, I can proudly say, confidently say that we have the best set of faculty in the Northeast. So our faculty comes from universities like Oxford, Harvard, Cambridge, INSEAD Paris, Erasmus University, University of Lille, Stanford, University of Pennsylvania. So most of our faculty are graduates from these universities, and then they bring in their expertise to our classroom and teach that to our students. So these are the faculty who will be teaching at STEP Academy.
Okay, I mean, that's very amazing. I think people should actually grab this opportunity because being in Nagaland, every one of us just sacrifices our many years for just to prepare for our competitive examinations, right? And then we waste most of our youth trying to beat something that we are not meant to be. So I think I would encourage our listeners, like if you know anyone who is just laying at home, then I would encourage them to take up these courses as well. And before we go more into STEP Academy, would you like to tell us about your consultancy that we were talking about some few minutes back, right?
Okay. So besides STEP Academy, I also run a consultancy firm called STEP Consultancy, and we provide bespoke trainings for our clients. So we focus on individuals who are clients who are preparing for interviews. So last year, one of our clients cracked the UPSC interview and is now an IRS officer. This year, we also have another UPSC aspirant who has cracked her mains, and we have trained her with her interviews preparation as well. Fingers crossed, hopefully she makes it. And then we have clients who are preparing for admissions, applying for admissions abroad. So we help them with their cover letters, we help them with their SOPs, right? We have entrepreneurs who are preparing for pitching to investors. So we help them with their communication skills, their presentation, their delivery. So this consultancy firm focuses on these aspects, right? So anybody can avail our services. Anybody who's preparing for interviews, anybody who wants to become better communicators, who wants to become better public speakers, we provide our services to all these individuals to help them become better versions of themselves. So this is our consultancy firm as well.
So how did you come up with the idea of STEP Academy and STEP Consultancy and STEP Northeast? I mean, those are very, if we have to see, they are very varied from each other, but they also connect each other, right?
Correct.
So how did you come up with it?
That's a good question. So before I started STEP Northeast, so STEP Northeast was the first, then came STEP Consultancy, then came STEP Academy. And this all came one after the other because of my learnings from doing each of this. The main reason why I started STEP Northeast was because of my lived experience. So by God's grace, I come from a very, financially poor background, right? I wasn't born into a rich family. So my whole life has been a trial and error method. One thing has led to the other, and that's how I ended up. So to make it short, despite everything, by God's grace, I was able to get a full scholarship to do my first master's at a Young India Fellowship. This opportunity opened so many doors for me, in the sense I became aware of so many things that are possible in this world, right? So that opened the door for me to apply for a scholarship, which led me to Netherlands to do my second master's in human rights, peace and conflict studies. Post that graduation, I came back to India and I had the privilege to work in various companies and organizations across India and across the world. So I worked in a consultancy, I worked with Amnesty International in the human rights sector, then I worked with a think tank, then I worked in a leadership development company, then I worked in a higher educational institute. So for the last 7-8 years I've been working in all of these companies and organizations across the world. And in 2020, beginning of 2020, COVID happened. So when COVID happened, I had a lot of time to think about my journey and about my future. And I realized one thing that struck me was I've been so lucky to be in this position. Lucky because of God's grace, of course, right? Because of God's blessings. I've been so lucky to have had this privilege, these opportunities. And I realized that the one thing that led me to that position, to that scenario, was because of the opportunities I received in life. And I realized that opportunities is such a leveler for us in our society. And I realized I've been so lucky, so privileged. Now I want to do something for the thousands of children that are growing up, right? Back in the Northeast. Many of them are growing up with no guidance, with no mentorship, just blindly studying. And that realization pained me. So had I not gotten those opportunities I received in life, I would also be lost right now, clueless, not knowing what to do, or just be doing something else. But because of opportunities, I was able to become that person. Now I wanted to use my experience to help the upcoming generation to make better choices in life. So that's why I quit my job in 2020 and came back to Manipur and started Step Northeast. And as I started Step Northeast, I realized that I was helping a lot of students, a lot of friends, a lot of acquaintances with their interview preparations. I was giving them tips, and somehow every person that I helped was successful. Right? And I realized, I think I've been doing this in a very unstructured manner. Let me do it in a more structured manner. Okay. Right? So that's how the idea of Step Consultancy came up. Because over the span of 1 to 2 years, friends, acquaintances, just random people approach me and say, help me with my CV, help me with my cover letter, help me with my interview, and I give them tips. I help them create a CV, and I would say 90% of them were successful in whatever they were applying for. And that gave me an idea to start Step Consultancy. So that's how Step Consultancy came up. And like I said before, Step Northeast, because over the course of my 3 years of running my NGO in the education sector, working with the students and youth, I realized that many of our students are lacking in all of the most essential skills that a student in this 21st century needs. Nobody knows how to ask questions. Nobody knows how to write emails. Nobody knows how to use MS Excel. Everybody just goes to school, memorizes their stuff, come back home, write exams, and that's how the condition is, the situation is. So that realization also made me come up with the idea of Step Academy. How do we bridge this gap, right? So which is why one thing led to the other. So all of these ideas did not happen at one go. So I was working, I was living a very successful life. That led me to realize that, I'm so blessed. I need to give something back to my people, to my community. So that's how I came back and started Step Northeast. And as I was doing Step Northeast, I was helping a lot of people. And I realized, this is something I'm good at, right? And I'm good at it because of my experience as well, right? So then let me do something in a more structured manner where I can also be more professional and help more people. That's how Step Consultancy came up. And as I work in the education field for so long, I realized there are so many things that a lot of our youth are lacking. So that's how this idea of Step Academy came up, right? I don't know what next will come up, but as of now, I'm working on these 3 aspects right now.
So how do you manage it? Having 3 things at your hand, how do you manage it? How do you manage your time? Do you even have the time to breathe?
Somehow even I'm surprised, but somehow I've just been able to manage it again through my parents' prayers, by God's grace, and through my parents' prayers and all. The people who've been praying for me, supporting me, I think it's all because of that. Because honestly speaking, I don't know how I'm able to manage all of this. If I sometimes sit down and think about my KRS, my key responsibility areas, I'm just shocked. For example, for Step Academy, since it's a startup, I don't have the means to employ a lot of people, so I do everything on my own. So from, finding the classroom, the office building, to creating the calendar, to creating the syllabus, to reaching out to faculty, to coordinating with them, to doing marketing, to designing posters, right? And traveling from college to college and talking about STEP, and then taking class for the students, and doing admin work. That is just Step Academy. And I still have Step Consultancy. I have to help with all these applications, with all these interview preps. Then I have Step Northeast. So when I look at it, sometimes even I'm shocked how I'm able to manage it. But at the same time, I also happen to get a lot of free time to do what I want, to play football, to play volleyball, to just hang out with friends. I'm able to do all of that as well. So I've not been, too stressed to be depressed and just become so anxious. So I think it's all because of God's grace.
And I also think that it also depends on how dedicated we are to do something, right?
True.
We find ways to manage time. So I think that's also a lesson for our listeners about time management. If we know how to manage our time, I think anything is possible.
Yeah, 100%. Time management is the key.
Yeah, and while you were telling me about your startup, I became very curious about your personal life. So would it be okay for me to ask some questions about how, like, where your education started and how you managed? Because you said that you came from a very poor background, right? So how did you manage it, and how many siblings do you have?
Okay, sure. So I have 3 siblings. We're 3 of us. I'm the oldest. I have a younger sister who's married, and I have a younger brother. So 5 of us in our family. And I studied till my 12th in Manipur. Okay, and after 12, my parents wanted me to be a doctor, so I took up science, and that plan became a flop. So which is why I'm here, not as a doctor but as an entrepreneur. Then I spent a year preparing for medical exams. I didn't even write the exam because I knew I wouldn't be able to clear it. Then after that, I went to Bangalore, and I did my undergrad. I did my BSW, Bachelor's of Social Work, at St. Joseph's College in Bangalore. The reason why I did BSW is also because I'd always wanted to help people, because that's what had been drilled inside my head from a very young age. While my grandparents were alive, they kept telling me, Worrin, you have to help people, right? You're the oldest in the family, and as the oldest firstborn, your life has been dedicated for God's service, which is why you need to help people, and which is why my parents wanted me to be a doctor, because they thought it was the best way to help people. But well, unfortunately, it didn't happen. So when I heard that there's a subject called social work, I was very intrigued. So I went down to Bangalore. I enrolled myself at St. Joseph's University. Then I did my undergrad there. Then after that, I applied for my master's at TIS, and I go through. But at the same time, I had applied for Young India Fellowship as well. So I had gotten through Young India Fellowship as well. So I decided to opt for that. So I went to Delhi. I did my 1-year master's program as a Young India Fellow, a liberal arts, one-year liberal arts master's program, which was conducted in collaboration with the University of Pennsylvania, Yale University, London School of Economics, Carleton College, Sciences Po Paris. They selected only 100 from all over India for this 1-year program. By God's grace, I was one of the 100. And after that, when I went to Young India Fellowship, that's when my eyes were opened. I realized how smart people really were. Until then, I thought I was smart. But when I went to that class of 100, I was the most dumb, right? That really shocked me, and that really brought me out of my comfort zone. And that 1 year was the most challenging, but the most rewarding as well. And after that, I never dreamt of going abroad. So like I said before, coming back to my family background, my mom and dad, they were not employed. So in the early stages of their life, my parents often tell me, right, that we were so poor. Right after their wedding, I think I was like 1-2 years old. They were so poor that they did not even have money to buy firewood. So they would go to this carpentry workshop and get those, you know that, right? After
Yeah.
all those leftover wooden powder and all, they would bring that home to make fire. So we live in Imphal. We live on the foothills of a hill. Foothills, of course. It's not that. So they would go to the jungle and get firewood, and then come back home and make fire with that. And from where we stayed to go to the bazaar, there was only one way to go, by through line service, jeep service. So that required, from my locality to the bazaar, 2 rupees. From bazaar to our locality, 2 rupees, 4 rupees in total. So my dad did not even have that. So apparently he said he would go from house to house and ask to borrow money, 5 rupees, 4 rupees and 1 rupee for his tea, right? Tea and snacks. He couldn't even find that. So he would end up come back home, get dressed, and go to the jungle, forest, and get just whatever he can from the jungle and come back. So that's the level of poverty that we were in. And that's when I think my parents also, it was God's way of teaching them. So that my parents, after having struggled that level of poverty for about 2-3 years, they said to themselves, as human beings, we're not supposed to live in this level of poverty. There must be something wrong with us. So let us, ask God, draw closer to God. So that's when they started their journey of seeking God. They were Christians, of course, but nominal Christians. So they started, and then, long story short, by God's grace, they found God. God found them, and they were born again. And somehow God started, in mysterious ways, God helped them become less poor, right? One thing led to the other. And even when I started going to school, my parents weren't the richest, but somehow my dad got a job as a clerk in a government department, and with that salary he was able to send us to schools, right? And that's how we grew up. But God's hand has always been there with us throughout our lives. My grandparents were very God-fearing. My parents were very God-fearing, and whatever they were not able to provide through material wealth, they were able to make it up through their, prayers, unceasing prayers every day for us. And what I am right now, what I've been able to achieve, it's not because of my brilliance or not because of my work. It is only because of God's grace, right? Because of God's grace. So, like I said, when I went to Young India Fellowship, because of this upbringing, because of the environment that I was exposed in, never in my wildest dream did I imagine that I would go abroad one day. My parents they were not that educated to be able to teach me, right? Or you have to go to Oxford. Who knows? They might not even have heard of Oxford that time. So never, right? But when I went to Young India Fellowship, towards the end of our graduation, all of my friends were like, I got into Oxford, I got into Harvard, I got into this, wow, I was shocked at the level of brilliance. So but at the same time I was challenged when I saw that the same friends of mine who are with me in the same classroom can get all of these admissions, why can I not?
Yes.
Right? So that's when I started applying for my admissions abroad. I got accepted and I applied for scholarship. I didn't get scholarship, so I couldn't go. The first year I deferred my admission, and the next year I admitted myself to Jamia Islamia University. And as I was doing my master's, simultaneously I was applying for scholarships. And I kept applying, kept getting rejected after rejections after rejections. 12 times I got rejected. In my 13th attempt, I got a scholarship. And with the scholarship, I went to Netherlands. I did my master's, and I came back home to India, right? And then I worked with Amnesty International. Then I worked with a think tank and a consultancy firm. Then I worked with a leadership development company. And we work with Fortune 500 companies with the senior executives. So we work with companies like McKinsey, Mercedes-Benz, T-Mobile in Germany, PwC. We work with their senior executive CEO level to vice president level. We conducted leadership training programs for them. So that job took me around the world, Germany, to Romania, to France, to Malaysia, to China. We were traveling to these countries and conducting these workshops for them. Then after that, I worked in Ladakh with a private higher educational institute as the head of marketing.
Mm.
And that's how it all happened. And when COVID happened, like I said before, that realization happened, right?
Mm.
From such a background
Mm.
to having reached that level.
Mm.
It's just beyond my imagination. And only because of God's grace and also because of the opportunities I received.
Mm.
And after I realized that I was so blessed, so lucky, I decided to come back home and do something for my own people. So that's how my educational journey has been, my professional journey has been, and that's what has led me to where I am right now.
So when you told me about you traveling around the country and all, one thing that struck my mind was, were your parents like allowing you to just travel around the world? Because I see that most of our Naga parents are very reluctant to send their children out of the state as well. Like they are like, this might happen before we even try it, right? So I think that's also a lesson for us. And would you like to tell us about your support from your parents?
Yeah, I've been very lucky. My parents have been super supportive of me in everything that I did. Right? The first thing, the first thing, they wanted me to be a doctor. I was still young. So that was the only thing I think that they forced something on me. And then they were gracious enough to say yes when I said, I can't do this. I want to do something else. And I guess in some way, so sometimes these are thoughts, that fleeting thoughts that comes through my mind. Sometimes I'm very happy, I'm very lucky sometimes that my parents weren't that educated. Since they were not as educated as their peers, they just said yes to everything. Just if you think this will make you successful, go for it, right? And I have also seen a lot of my friends, relatives whose parents are very educated. Since they're too educated, they are more in control of the children's life as well. No, don't do this. No, I'm not talking about the good and bad. Everything has its pros and cons. But in my own personal experience, I've been given so much freedom, right? To do whatever I want, to pursue whatever I want, to travel wherever I want, because my parents wanted me to be successful. And since they did not have the knowledge to be able to guide me, they trusted me to do what's best for me, right? And also, obviously, again, that has to do with trust as well, because while growing up, I was a responsible kid, I think, which is why they were more trusting. Had I been, despite even, let's say, my parents were not educated, and if I had been a rowdy kid, maybe they wouldn't have put so much trust in me. But because of God-fearing upbringing that they instilled in me, they trusted me as well. So which is why all of this happened. So yeah, I've been very lucky to have such parents in my life who have been so supportive of me no matter what. And that also instilled a sense of responsibility in me, that they trust me with this much, I must repay the trust with something concrete. Right? So that also sort of pushed me to succeed and become a better version of myself.
Yeah, and one thing I liked about your parents is that they wanted you to work for God, but they didn't force you to do theology, because as we can see, coming back to our society, we see that Naga parents will be like, not only Naga parents, but I'm pretty sure Christian family, when we try to dedicate children to God, we literally force them to do theology despite them wanting to, or despite them lacking spiritually. But your parents found another way, alternate way of serving God, that was through letting you study doctor, right? So I think that's amazing. That's really amazing.
I'm not gonna lie. At one point of time, they said I should be a missionary while growing up. Okay, so until my 6th standard, I think, if people ask me, what is your aim in life, I used to say missionary, pastor. So I'm not gonna lie, that I'm sure they went through that phase as well, where since as the oldest in the family, as someone that has been dedicated for God's service, they wanted me to become a missionary as well. And over time, somehow they also became more open-minded and said, we think serving God can also be in so many other forms, not just through being a pastor or a missionary, but there are so many other ways to serve God as well. But the utmost importance is that you have to fear God, right? And you need to know that whatever you do should be for the extension of His kingdom, for His glorification. And it can be done through any profession. And that's how they allowed me to do all these things that I've done. So I'm very lucky. I'm very blessed.
Coming back to the conversation where you told our listeners that most of us don't even know how to write emails, right? I must add to that indeed it is, because back in masters, back in my bachelor days, there were my friends who would ask me to write their leave applications as well. So that's the level of knowledge that our students are gaining, right? From whom do we blame that for the maybe the system of education that we have, or maybe like, of course, I think this is the best question to ask you, because you have been traveling around to different colleges all over India, and I think you even went to Oxford University, or was it, I think it was Oxford University that you went there for your lecture session, or
No, I haven't gone to Oxford yet.
so which university
I
was
hope
it?
so. I went to Lady Shri Ram College. I went to Delhi School of Economics. I went to Ashoka University. And a bunch of other universities and colleges in the Northeast. So I have not ventured out of India yet.
Okay.
As of now. I've gotten some invitations from my alma mater in the Netherlands, but there have been some date clashes, so it hasn't worked out yet. But hopefully, they will come when
might
I
have
start
flushed
going.
it. Or I think it was because of the Oxford University lectures.
Yes,
that
could be.
yes,
because
I
we
flushed it with it.
but we invite a lot of people from Oxford to come and talk to our students
Yeah.
for our guest sessions. So you must have
Yeah,
maybe
I might
confused
have.
with that. Yeah.
So coming back to the question, I would like to ask you, what is the difference of education system that you find in Nagaland and in other colleges as well?
Yeah. So having studied both in India and abroad, there's a huge difference. In the Northeast and in India in general, we're still stuck with a memory-based approach to education, right? You have to mug up everything. So back in high school, let's say for English, let's say there's a poem called The Road Less Traveled, right? So what I'll do for exam is that I will go back home and memorize every sentence, every word, every punctuation. Go to exam, write that poem, get full marks, and be happy. And people will be like, whoa, this guy is very good in English. He got 100 out of 100, example. But I don't understand what a poem means. I don't see, the beauty of a poem is that it can be interpreted in so many ways,
Very true.
right? But our system does not teach us that. The teacher will just come and read that poem, will make us repeat that poem after him or her, and memorize that poem and write that exam. There's no questioning, right? What does this mean in your life? What do you think the poet means when he says, I took the road less traveled? How can you sort of apply it in your life? Nothing of that sort of discussion. It's just memorization. This is one example I'm giving. And that's the case for every subject. We go to class, the teacher reads out, we memorize, we make notes, we go back home, memorize those notes, one night or one all-nighter, go to exam hall, write the exam paper, get good marks, forget everything. That's it. You
Very
graduate.
true. Yeah.
So there's no learning, right? But when I went to Netherlands, at my university, everything was an open book exam, which means, let's say, for one course, it'll be divided into 5 sections. There'll be a short essay for 20%. There'll be a long essay for 40%. There'll be group presentation 20%. There'll be another group work 30%. So everything comes up to 100%, right? For the short essay, let's say you'll have to write 2,500 word essay. Based on, you have to cite 5 articles, 5 journals, 5 books. For the long essay, you need to cite, which means if you cite, you need to read. So I'll go back to cite 5 articles, I need to read 10 articles, right? So I would go back and read everything to come up with my answer, to write my essay. So when I first went there, when I said it's an open book exam, I was so happy. Yay, this is easy. Then I realized, whoa, this is so much harder. So there, I remember every answer that I wrote till now because the answers were by me. I read it, I formulated my answers, and I came up with the essay. So I remember what I wrote. And that's the level of education that allows me to be a better critical thinker, that allows me to, question things, that allows me to formulate my own answers, as opposed to you memorizing what's been given to you. And I would say that's one of the biggest difference in the system. Let me not go into infra and tech and all of that. That's like day and night, but just the system itself. So, and that's what we're trying to achieve at STEP Academy as well. We want to make our students more critical thinkers. We want them to ask questions. We want them to write their own answers with their own interpretations, and have that environment of just interacting with your peers and with your teacher and just learning out of it. So that's I think that's a difference between the system here in India and Northeast and education system abroad.
So like you have went to many colleges interacting with the students, right? Have there been any awkward situation where you have been waiting for the students to ask question and the questions never arise?
All the time. all the time. The question asking culture is still very new. Again, it has to do with the system, I guess, because just based on a personal experience, when we were students, when we ask questions, sometimes the teachers would scold us. Right? You think you know better than me? Why are you asking question? You come and take the class if you're asking question. Something of that sort. Or if we ask questions, our friends in the back would be making fun of us.
Yeah, very true.
Things like that. And then because of all of those environment, we never ask questions.
Very true.
Right? And that is also, I think, one reason why many of our students are unable to ask questions. And hopefully, I hope that the day will come when we overcome this fear of asking questions, because if one doesn't have the guts to ask questions, it's difficult to survive in this world, right? It's difficult to survive in this world. So let's hope that they will come.
So also let's come back to your beginning. Like I'm pretty sure you must have struggled to start up your own company, to start up your own STEP Academy, right? So I'm pretty sure even financially you must have struggled very much. So how did you like manage to bring it up?
Yeah, it was such a struggle, difficult journey. The reason when I decided to quit my job and come back, I knew that this was the right thing because my heart was in the right place, right? Because of my conviction, because of my motivation, because of the goals that I had in mind, I knew this was the right thing to do. But in hindsight, it was a bit foolish as well because it was all emotions and no practicality. Thankfully, having worked for the last 7-8 years, thankfully I had some money saved up. And for the first year running my NGO, I used up all my savings. I was doing everything out of, I was doing everything out of altruism. I want to help people. Everything out of my own pocket. And that really burnt a hole in my pocket. And after 1 year, didn't have the money to, do my thing. And also, I had no one to guide me. So even registering my NGO, it was a huge struggle because I didn't even know what needed to be done. I had to literally go from door to door and ask people a huge struggle. But it was all a learning experience. So after 1 year of having run my NGO with my own money and having run out of it, I realized, no, something's wrong, right? I need to be sustainable. And that's when the idea of charging for my services came up. So I've been conducting workshops for free. And I realized this is what I'm conducting, right? It has taken years of investment.
Yeah.
Right? What I'm conducting right now, it doesn't happen automatically. I've invested so many years, so much time, so much money to acquire all of the skills that I've acquired that I am teaching now. So I started charging for my workshops, and I was invited to a lot of workshops to conduct trainings, to conduct workshops for entrepreneurs, for institutes, for universities, for churches, for everything. So I started charging money, and that's how I started slowly getting a slow passive income. So with that money that I earned, I was able to, run my NGO as well. And another form was through the generosity of other people as well. So people who really understood what I do, why I do, then they started donating money, right? They were donating money for my fellowship program and all of that. So that's how it all happened. But then again, I realized that I cannot survive on donations for the rest of my life. So I had to come up with other ways. So I've been always wanting to start my own academy, and thankfully I'm able to start one here. So now here students pay fees. So the money that I get from this is also for my survival, of course, and at the same time, whatever profit we make goes into our non-profit for us to continue creating the impact that we create in the northeastern region. So that is how we're able to survive so far.
I think you're the perfect example of using your talent to earn money, because one thing I've learned from the story that they have shared with our listeners and to me, I think that whatever good thing that you have shouldn't be done for free, because most people actually take advantage of getting it for free, so they literally keep on burdening you with all the small things. It might sound very small, but then you are actually giving your time, your creativity, your talent for it, right?
True.
So I think that's a very interesting thing that I've learned from you today. And I'm so glad that you're here, and I always do this with my listeners. So if there is anything that you would like to share with our listeners and to people who would be tuning into your conversation, what will be your message?
My message is based on my experience. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So fear God first, and everything else will fall into place. And that's how like I said, I was never in control of my life. I had no idea what I was gonna do. I was as clueless as anyone. But because of my parents' prayers, because of my grandparents' prayers, somehow God just made a path for me unexpectedly, right? And one thing led to the other. And in hindsight, when I look back, because I put God first in my life, the rest, God just made it happen. And people might look at me and say, wow, he's so successful, oh, he's so smart, oh, I was never this way. But only because of God's grace, I'm able to be in this position. And if any of the listeners, if you have, if you want to achieve big things in life, if you have all these big plans in life, let God take control of your life, and everything else will fall into place. So that would be my advice for my listeners.
And a question just struck my mind. Before you were saying that you were applying to become a doctor, but then you knew that you couldn't do it, so you just left it, right? So I'm pretty sure you might have taken a lot of courage to do that, because going for science and trying to become a doctor, a lot of money investment from parents as well, for your education must have gone, right? I think most of our students here, they just pursue the studies because they don't want to waste up their parents' the parents' investment over them. So would you like to say something about that, encouraging students, how you managed to drop that and then just walking on your path?
Again, that's a tricky question. But that's what I keep telling people. In your 20s, your early 20s to mid 20s, it's a time for you to make mistakes. So when I look back, I can say that it was a mistake for me to have taken science, or to have taken a year break to become a doctor. So, but all these mistakes I made when I was in my early 20s. And because of that, it also gave me a lot of experience. So I wouldn't call it a mistake as well, because these are all learning experiences. So I think if any of the listeners are in their early 20s, it's a time for you to make mistakes. just explore. Let's say I realized at first, doctor. I mean, the prospect of being a doctor sounded very, nice. So I gave it a shot. Even though I don't want to, I didn't want to disobey my parents. So I did it, but I realized, nah, it's not my cup of tea. So that's when I realized, okay, this is not I want to be, right? Had I never done it, I wouldn't have had that realization also. So in your 20s, but if you continue making mistakes up to your late 20s and early 30s, then that's a recipe for failure. So do whatever you want to, explore whatever you want to in your 20s, but by your mid 20s, start having some commitments or a clearer picture of what you want in life. And then in your late 20s and early 30s is when you start consolidating in those wants into something that's tangible, right? So in my case, again, I'm just lucky. I'm just lucky. My parents also were very understanding. Obviously, they invested a lot for my 1-year coaching and all of that. And in 2 months, I gave up because I didn't want to be a doctor. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Well, I don't think it's lucky, but I think it's your hard work that led you here. I don't believe in the term lucky, to be really honest. I think most of the people writing examinations, some of them do really work hard, but then someone who works much better than them gets the opportunity to become somebody, right? Likewise, some people, they just believe on luck and they don't prepare much and they just keep on waiting for the luck. So I think it's your hard work that brought you up to wherever you are right now. So I think that's an encouragement for all. And I might be contradicting with what he said, but then it's not luck, it's your hard work.
I agree.
Yeah, so you should work hard. I've seen this. I met Worrin back in 2022 when he was, I think it was not for STEP Academy, but it was for YI Fellowship at Tetso College.
No, the political science department organized this career counseling and invited me to be a speaker.
Oh, okay.
So that's how I ended up at Tetso in 2022.
Yeah, but back then I think it was connected to YI something, because I heard most of your conversation was based on YI as well, right? As much as I'm not...
It must be YIF.
Oh, YIF.
The Young India Fellowship
Yeah.
that I studied. Yeah, because I think the YI is the Young Indians thing, right?
Yeah. So that was where I met him, and I have seen him working very hard. Like, he's very young, by the way, if in case you guys are wondering, like, I mandok age na everything. No, I don't think he's even married. So he's very young. And then imagine, like, if you don't mind, tell us your age as well, no?
Not that young. 33.
He's just 33 and he established 3 companies. I mean, like, this is just wonderful. So I think we should also be encouraged by whatever he has reached out till now. I'm pretty sure that struggling period be bishi, but that struggling period they will overcome Krishna. Now I think out of nothing he became a very wonderful, very strong tree, just like a seed planted on a very good soil. So that's all I would like to say, and I would like Worrin to end today's conversation with anything that you would like to tell our listeners.
If anyone's listening, thank you for tuning in, and thank you to Hills FM for this opportunity as well. I had a great time just talking about my life, about my work, about my journey. And yeah, whoever I am, whatever I am right now is only because of God's grace. So I would like to encourage our listeners to also keep this in mind. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And as Matthew says, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. So the moment we just let God take control of our lives, everything else will fall into place. So I want to encourage our listeners to keep that in mind. And if there's anything that you would like to ask, if there's any queries that you would like to talk to me, or about STEP, about anything else, you can just reach out to our Instagram page. We have STEP Academy, STEP Northeast on Instagram. You can directly DM us, and we will be more than happy to reach out to you and answer your questions and your doubts. And on Facebook as well, STEP Academy, STEP Northeast, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, So we're on every social media page. So you can always reach out to us and DM us with your questions or whatever doubts that you might want to clear.
Yeah. One last question before we end the conversation. That will be like, is the admission taken monthly wise, or any student that wants to apply can just apply any
So-
time?
Any student can apply. Any student can apply. In the first batch, we had students who were just class 12 pass as well, to students who were who had finished a master's or who were currently working, right? As young as 18 to as old as mid 30s. So we had this huge diversity in terms of our students. So anybody can apply. You just have to, if you go to our Instagram page, there'll be a QR code, or you can also, on our bio, there's a Google form. You just have to fill up the form. It'll take 10 seconds and we'll reach out to you with the details. Classes will start on the 15th, so admissions are still going on. You can still apply. You can either pay 8,000. If you pay full payment, there's a 500 rupees discount, so 7,500 for 2 months. But you can also pay monthly, 4,000. So that's how it goes.
Well, I hope you guys have noted down all the information that he have passed on. So don't forget, it's STEP, STEP, STEP Northeast and STEP Academy. So please do follow them and try to get them, try to know them. And if in case there's anyone, there's like who have plans to work, I would suggest you guys to not to rely on those internet workshops to do your CVs, but to take classes from STEP Northeast, from STEP Academy, and get to do your own CVs. That's been very bluntly honest, to be honest, because I did my CV from the internet workshop as well. But anyway, I think it was not because of my CV, but it was because of my hard work that I got the job. But not everyone is lucky to get jobs.
True.
So do that. So this is your RJ Betonika signing off, but I hope that you guys enjoyed the conversation we had, and I'll be back with another guest, another station. So keep tuning to 90.8 Hills FM.
You're listening to 90.8 Hills FM Radio.
This is 90.8 Hills FM radio station, using our voice to rate your choice. Stay tuned.